It's been a couple of years since I started working as a delivery driver. Now, I've had my fair share of weird stuff happen on the job, but nothing comes close to what went down on this one bright, sunny afternoon, around 1 o'clock. I was out on my regular deliveries, and the car was filled with the smell of hot pizzas. My next stop was a house tucked away in a pretty ordinary-looking neighborhood. As I pulled up, I couldn't help but notice how neat and tidy the yard was. It was quiet, too. Almost too quiet. The door creaked open, and this sweet old lady appeared. She was leaning on her walker, and her hand trembled as she gave me the money. Then she asked me to do something a bit unusual. Could I take the pizza inside for her and put it on the table? Now, it's not usually appropriate for delivery drivers to go inside people's houses. It's a safety thing. But this lady reminded me of my grandma, and I just couldn't say no. As I walked in, I immediately felt a chill, as though the inside of the house was significantly colder than it should have been. And despite it being bright outside, the inside was dim, with long, creepy shadows stretching out. I tried to ignore the feeling, telling myself I was just being silly, and put the pizza down on her table. Just as I was about to leave, I heard this noise. It was coming from upstairs. At first, I thought it was just the sounds of an old house settling, but then I heard this sound like something heavy being dragged. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The old lady didn't seem to notice anything, though. She left the room to get me an extra tip, leaving me alone in the kitchen. As soon as she was gone, the thumping started again, louder this time, and the dragging noise followed. I called out to her, asking about the noises, but she just brushed it off, saying she didn't hear anything. I was about to say something else when I heard a gasp. It was sudden and sharp, and it came from the direction of the stairs near the front door. I looked up, my heart pounding in my chest, and I saw a shadowy figure disappear from sight. I felt a rush of cold fear, and every instinct I had was telling me to get out of there. I was just about to make a beeline for the door when the old lady came back with my tip. I thanked her, my voice shaky, and practically ran out of the door. Back at my car, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. There was a certain comfort in the familiar scent of the worn-out seats and the subtle hum of the engine. My hands were still trembling slightly as I fumbled with the car keys. I wanted nothing more than to put some distance between myself and that house. Just before I was about to shift into drive, I figured I'd give the house one last look. Just to reassure myself that it was just an ordinary house with an old lady living in it. Not anything out of a horror movie. The old lady was still standing in the doorway, sort of watching me. I don't know why she was still there. Maybe she wanted to make sure I was leaving? Or perhaps she just had nothing better to do. Either way, she was just standing there, with a stillness that seemed unnatural. That's when I saw an upstairs window, partially hidden by the fluttering curtains. I squinted, trying to make out what was inside. I could have sworn I saw a figure there, just staring right back at me. It was like those optical illusions, where you can't really tell if you're seeing something, or if your brain's just filling in the gaps. I told myself it was probably just a coat rack or some furniture. Yeah, that had to be it. Just as I was trying to make sense of it, the figure moved. It was a quick, jerky movement, kind of like when you see something you're not supposed to, and you quickly duck out of sight. My heart felt like it was trying to pound its way out of my chest. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. It's just a trick of the light. Or maybe the old lady had a really creepy statue. Right? But there was this feeling deep in my gut, a primal sort of fear screaming at me to get out of there. I didn't wait any longer. I threw the car into drive and hit the gas. I didn't even bother buckling up first. Safety be damned. As I sped away, I couldn't help but look back one more time. There was the old lady, just standing there in the doorway like a statue. It was quite eerie how she just stood there, unmoving. But what really creeped me out was that upstairs window. Behind the thin curtains, I saw it again, a shadowy figure. It was like a dark smudge against the lighter background of the curtain, just hovering there. I couldn't make out any details, but it was definitely someone, or something. Back at the pizza place, I told my coworkers about what happened. They just laughed it off, saying it was all in my head. Though I didn't care, I was just relieved I never had to deliver to that address again. Even now, I can't forget that day. It's a reminder that things aren't always what they seem. And even on the sunniest of days, you can still run into some pretty dark stuff. It was a stormy night, rain pouring relentlessly from the darkened sky as if nature itself was setting the stage for the eerie events that would soon unfold. My husband and I had just moved into our new apartment earlier that day, brimming with excitement and dreams of a fresh start. Little did we know that our seemingly ordinary night would turn into a chilling experience that would grip our souls. As we unpacked boxes and settled into our new home, the sound of rain tapping against the windows created a soothing rhythm. The apartment had an air of newness, a blank canvas awaiting our personal touch. We marveled at the spacious rooms, envisioning the memories we would create within these walls. But the tranquility was shattered as the clock struck 9 p.m. and the doorbell echoed through the empty corridors. Startled, I glanced at my husband, exchanging puzzled looks. Who could be visiting us at this hour? We cautiously made our way to the door, our steps accompanied by the gentle patter of raindrops outside. With a sense of trepidation, I swung the door open, revealing a pizza delivery guy standing on our doorstep, clutching a steaming box of pizza. I blinked in disbelief, my mind racing to comprehend the situation. We hadn't ordered any pizza. Could this be a mistake? "I'm sorry," I stammered, trying to find the right words. We didn't order any pizza. The delivery guy seemed just as bewildered, furrowing his brows and checking the address on the receipt. He didn't say anything, just a look of pure confusion on his face. I shook my head and said, "Sorry" once more, feeling a mix of unease and curiosity. How could our address be associated with an order we didn't make? My husband and I exchanged puzzled glances, contemplating the strange occurrence before us. Still not saying anything, the pizza guy left, casting a lingering gaze over his shoulder. As the door closed, a shiver ran down my spine, the unease growing within me like a rising tide. The next evening, I was home alone, as my husband works grave shifts in the hospital. As the clock approached 9 p.m., a sense of anticipation and anxiety settled over our apartment. Would the doorbell ring again? Could it have been a simple mix-up? A one-time occurrence? But as if in response to my unspoken questions, the doorbell shattered the silence, its chimes reverberating through the rooms. Heart pounding, I hurried to the door, hoping for answers or a logical explanation. Yet, standing on the threshold, I found myself face to face with the pizza delivery guy once more. The same confusion clouded his eyes, mirroring the thoughts swirling within my mind. "I didn't order pizza," I said, my voice quivering with annoyance. "I don't understand why this keeps happening." His gaze met mine, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he stared at me blankly, an eerie sensation sending a chill down my spine. My mind raced, searching for clues, for any semblance of an explanation. I recalled hearing whispers from neighbors about a car accident involving a pizza delivery guy in the vicinity before we moved in. Could there be a connection? A lingering presence unable to escape its earthly duties? I slammed the door shut, my body trembling with fear and my hands turning icy cold. I cautiously glanced through the window, but to my relief, he was gone. Terror consumed me, and my mind raced with a flurry of unsettling thoughts, depriving me of much-needed sleep that night. Desperate for answers, my husband and I turned to our neighbors, eager to hear their tales and gather any clues. We even reached out to the pizza delivery company, trying to get to the bottom of the enigmatic delivery guy wearing their uniform. The truth emerged, painting a tragic picture of a young driver whose life was abruptly cut short in a stormy car accident just outside our building. As the fragments of information connected, a haunting realization dawned upon us. Could it be that the spirit of the departed delivery driver was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to fulfill his unfinished deliveries? With a mix of apprehension and compassion, my husband and I made a firm decision to confront the restless spirit. We delved into local legends, exploring tales of the unexplained, and discussed at length how we could tackle this eerie encounter. Though we briefly considered seeking the guidance of a paranormal expert, we ultimately relied on our own instincts and devised a plan of action. As the third night approached, we understood that it would be a pivotal moment, our chance to unravel the mystery and find some resolution. As my husband bid me farewell and left for work earlier that evening, a sense of anticipation mingled with fear settled over our apartment. The clock neared 9 p.m., and the rain outside intensified, casting a haunting ambiance. Each droplet seemed to tap against the windows with an eerie rhythm, amplifying the tension in the room. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay beyond the door. The doorbell chimed, shattering the silence, and with trembling hands, I approached, ready to face the enigmatic pizza delivery guy once again. Opening the door, I was met with an unsettling sight. His presence was more menacing this time, his eyes devoid of humanity, as if trapped in an eternal void. Without uttering a word, he extended the pizza box towards me, his gaze fixated on my trembling hands. Summoning every ounce of courage, I spoke with a voice that quivered but held determination. "You don't belong here. Your time has passed. Find peace and release yourself from this endless cycle." In that moment, a heavy silence hung in the air, as if time itself held its breath. The pizza delivery guy's eyes, once empty and devoid of life, flickered with a glimmer of recognition. Was it possible that he understood the words I had spoken? Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded, his gaze penetrating the depths of my soul. It was as if the truth had pierced through the darkness that consumed him, and a flicker of understanding ignited within his spectral form. The nod was both confirmation and acceptance, a solemn acknowledgement of the truth that bound us in this eerie encounter. And then, in an instant, he vanished. The apartment fell into an eerie stillness, the weight of that uncanny encounter hanging in the air. From that night onward, the doorbell no longer chimed at 9 p.m. The apartment regained its tranquility, free from the haunting pizza deliveries. Yet, the memory of those spine-chilling encounters remained etched in our minds, a testament to the unexplainable forces that coexist with our reality. As we settled into our new life, we couldn't help but wonder about the fate of that lost spirit. Had he found solace and been released from his perpetual duty? Or did he linger still, forever trapped between realms? The questions remained unanswered, leaving us with a sense of awe and reverence for the mysterious powers that lie beyond our comprehension. We still talk about our strange encounter, a story that defies explanation and leaves us with more questions than answers. It's a reminder that there are things out there we can't fully understand, things that go beyond the ordinary. As raindrops dance on our windows during stormy nights, we can't help but wonder if there are other restless souls, trapped in their own unfinished stories, forever searching for closure. The world is full of mysteries, and sometimes we stumble upon them when we least expect them. I've worked as a delivery driver for DoorDash in Missouri for some time now, and I've always preferred daylight deliveries. Nighttime deliveries were not particularly my favorite, but not for any particular reason. It just felt different. Yet one evening, whether it was the monotony of the day or the prospect of an extra tip, I found myself accepting an order well past my usual hours. The call came in around 9 p.m. The customer was in an apartment complex nearby, and the tip was decent. So I thought, why not? I had no idea that this seemingly routine delivery would soon take an unexpected turn. The apartment complex was a sprawling mass of buildings that looked eerily identical under the dimly lit street lamps. Finding the right apartment proved more difficult than I anticipated, with the numbers on the doors barely discernible in the low light. I tried to reach out to the customer for help, but his texts were terse and slightly ambiguous, which only added to my growing confusion. Eventually, after a good deal of wandering and squinting at door numbers, I found the right building. As I climbed the stairs to the third floor, I began to feel a peculiar unease, which I attributed to the unfamiliar territory and the less than ideal lighting conditions. And then there he was. The customer, standing in the dimly lit hallway. He stood perfectly still, not making any move to acknowledge my presence or approach me. I called out his name, but he simply continued to look at me without uttering a word. His intense, unbroken gaze was strangely disconcerting. With a slight sense of apprehension, I handed him his order. His silence persisted, making the situation all the more unnerving. I asked if he needed anything else, but his response was a slow, almost mechanical nod. His gaze, still locked onto me, seemed to hold an unnerving intensity. Without any further delay, I turned to leave. As I made my way down the stairs, I couldn't shake off the feeling that his eyes were still following me. I tried to rationalize it as the effect of a long day, or perhaps the customer being under the influence, or just having an off day. But as I continued my deliveries that night, the events of that encounter lingered in my mind, casting a shadow over what was usually a routine job. Each delivery now had an added layer of anxiety, and I found myself questioning my comfort with working late hours. The thought of looking into a day job started to seem more appealing, a way to avoid the uncertainty that seemed to come with the territory of nighttime deliveries. That one delivery had subtly shifted my perspective, instilling in me a newfound apprehension about what could be lurking in the shadows.